This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to Be Nation Comics proudly presents DC Post-Crisis Management, a monthly miniseries exploring DC Comics crisis events from 1986 through today. Universes will die, continuities will reboot, minds will be bent, and eyes will cross. The end is only the beginning. Is the end. Or some such nonsense.
Post-crisis management road trip continues, and as I said last time, something hit me as I was leaving the L-Shape Studios, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. I thought my trip was going to take me out to Vegas since I was already on the West Coast as it was, but nose really started twitching and it pulled me to the east. It said I had to make a trip to New Jersey. And that's really weird. I don't understand what's happening. But I'm here in New Jersey. I've just pulled up to this lovely home. I don't really know who lives here, but it looks nice. It looks very warm and inviting, like the DC universe itself. It seems, at a time, maybe a little chaotic, but always friendly and inviting. And here I am. I'm going to go check this house out. We're going to find out just exactly who lives here and why they seem to have had this odd pull on me. I don't understand it quite yet, but I've walked up to the door here, and there's a cat. There's a cat standing there at this nice door, looking up at me. Seems really worried. She's really meowing at me like she wants to let me in, but I think she's a little trepidatious. So I better give her something to ease her fears. Let's see what I got here in my pockets. There's some leftover bacon from a Baconator, because I in fact did steal it from Greg's Baconator, but I didn't eat all of it. So here you are, kitty. You let me in, you can have it. She has unlocked the door. She is very graciously allowing me into the house. That is a really smart and talented cat. And on her collar, it appears her name is Boo. She's a very nice kitty. Hi, Boo. How are you? And wow, this really is a nice place. Seems very inviting, warm, and see, there are pictures on the wall. Let's see if I can determine who's. Oh my! This house appears to belong to Mitch Okun, who made his Place to Be Nation debut on the PTBN third biennial comics draft. He had a strong showing there. I always wondered what his secret might be and where all his comic book knowledge comes from. The cat seems very insistent that I follow her to this back room, so I'm walking into this room, and oh dear God, this room is, ladies and gentlemen, this is not only wall-to-wall comics. I mean, this is a lifetime collection. There's a big whiteboard here. This is very unsettling, ladies and gentlemen. This is something I did not expect to find. I don't know if that dramatic music I'm hearing is just in my head or if it's everywhere, but this is a plan to take all of us at the Place to Be Nation Comics contingent down. He's been planning this for years. This is terrifying. Whoever wins the comics draft is going to be in real trouble. Mitch is targeting them. I can't let this stand. I am going to sit right here in the dark because once again I'm in a house where no one believes in saving energy and turning their lights off when they're not home. It happened in the L-shaped studios. It's happening here. I'm sensing a pattern to all of this. There's some kind of nefarious plan going on, and I think Mitch is at the center of it. I'm going to turn these lights off. I'm going to wait for him to get home. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Things are going to get real tense in here.
Man, that was a long day walking around catching Pokemon like a total nerd. At least I'm home now. But why are all the lights off? We usually try to leave some of the lights on. I hope the cats aren't hiding because they had yet another party. It took me so long to get the catnip off the ceiling last time. Nothing going on in the living room. What's going on over here in the library? Let me turn the other light on. Russell?
Hello, Mitch.
I knew you were driving around, but I didn't expect to see you sitting in the dark in my library with my cat.
Yes. You see, Boo has told me what you've done. And I have to say, Mitch, it was very clever, very shrewd. But Boo has turned traitor on you, and she's my kitty now.
Boo!
Yes.
I always knew it was eventually going to happen.
Yes.
Now, technically, I haven't done this yet, Russell. It was only a plan. It was theoretical.
Yes, but your plan is very transparent. You thought you could get away with it, but the twitch of the nose led me from the L-shaped studios all the way here to New Jersey.
Well, I certainly understand why not everybody wants to come here, but I particularly enjoy it.
Garden State indeed.
Yes, it is. And in my defense, I really, really, really want to win that next draft.
Yes, that seems to be your plan. It's very clever what you've done. These whiteboards are very impressive. I will say that your attention to detail is something that I did not expect. And you are certainly smarter than anyone ever gave you credit for. Your pitches were the thing that tipped me off, but this is beyond even my imagination. I am appalled, really. But it reminds me of a story, Mitch, that frankly has been weighing on me for a little while now. And I see it here in your vast collection, this very impressive library of DC comics and comics in general. But your DC collection impresses me, sir.
Oh, thank you, I guess. But,
yes.
but you're telling me going into somebody else's brain as a microscopic organism is not an original idea on my part? I've forgotten this.
Don't you think to tell me what an original idea is, sir. I'll have you know I am a founding father of that comics draft that you reference. I know original. Don't ever think to lecture me. But yes, this story is certainly one that we have to talk about because I haven't been feeling like myself lately, Mitch.
I've heard. Yes.
And
let's talk about your problems instead. Let's move on past this.
We have to talk about this story, this classic DC crisis that honestly isn't a crisis like any of the others. It is an identity crisis, if you will.
Oh, yes.
Much of like I have been suffering, and this is from acclaimed novelist Brad Meltzer and prolific DC artist Rags Morales. It was released in
one of my favorite of the Crisis books. Personally, I'm glad that you came to me to talk about this one. At least, as folks who have listened to the draft know how much that dragged me into you guys' little world here. My involvement with the aforementioned nose-shaking, elongated man, and his involvement in this story.
Yes, this is quite one for the ages because unlike the last two crises that I have discussed with Todd Weber and then previously with Greg Phillips in the L-shaped studio, there are no red skies. There's no universe-ending event happening here. This is just as it says, an identity crisis of who are the Justice League? What is the point of their existence? And are they really as good as they seem to be? Have they ever compromised their own values? And this 2004 story seems to suggest that, yeah, they compromised a lot of their own values, but it kicks off in a pretty drastic way. The first issue of it seems like sweet enough anyway, kicking off with, as you mentioned, the elongated man out on patrol with a rookie hero.
Firehawk.
Yes, Firehawk. She's very new to the game. I think she was like very new at the time this story was being published. And this whole thing, though, is basically just a gimmick. Elongated Man was encouraged to go out on patrol by his wife so that essentially she could plan and organize his surprise birthday party. And it seems that's really sweet. That was something that I really loved about the opening of this story. And as the issue progresses, he kind of gives a little bit of history of he and Sue, talking about
This is definitely one of the first places right away where you get the difference between Metzer's writing and a long-time comics writers who we've dealt with in the previous crises. Metzer is a novelist. He had only done 5 issues of Green Arrow before this in the comic world before coming in here. But he treats these characters like you would deep main characters in a novel, especially a mystery novel, which is where Ralph and Sue have their origins from.
Yeah, they are. Ralph is a great detective, as evidenced very early on because he tells Firehawk that he knows exactly what his wife is up to.
They're nice. It's nice little touches that they have all those details and fill it into the universe. Mm-hmm. Even the concept of the Daily Planet story about all of the history of these events that happen every year when she does these.
Yeah, it's great. It's these great little moments. And we also check in with the other members of the Justice League. Specifically, we see Superman out in Smallville, Kansas, visiting with his parents in a sweet little bit. But this is also the moment where we realize that there's something happening, that something is going wrong, because Superman gets a page, if you will, on a pager, because Superman in 2004 was carrying a pager.
Oh, that's right. It's the daily pages that they all have. Yes.
Yes. And he freaks out and tells his parents to lock down the farm and stay inside. Don't answer the door for anybody. Because something.
It's so classic Kansas of them, where later in the story when we talk about all the alien tech and all the serious things that they're using to protect all the family members, but in Kansas in Smallville, you just lock the doors.
Yeah, you just lock up. Everybody's tripping out. As you can tell, as you start to be able to see that this is jumping around in time, in this first issue at least, because what you're seeing from Elongated Man, supposedly watching an arms deal go on in an alleyway, we're seeing his wife preparing a cake. It kind of seems like there's somebody in the house. She's looking around but doesn't see anyone. We don't see anybody. All of this seems to go like really, really wrong, like really, really fast. And the next thing we know, we see Sue Denby dead on the floor of their kitchen, and then someone standing over her and with a flamethrower, setting her body on fire.
Yep, that's pretty drastic pretty quickly. And it's funny, Sue was a character who was used on and off, but she was never far from Ralph when he was used. She was never a major character, but she certainly was not a minor thing that was brought back from a random past. She's always been there, and the fact that they were a couple was an important part of their story. So it's a devastating character to choose in a different manner than it would be killing, say, a Flash or a Supergirl in Crisis, but it's definitely a major death in a different manner.
It gets worse. because not only is Sue dead here, and Elongated Man finds his wife, her burned body, he finds the present that she had wrapped for him, which turns out to be the results of a pregnancy test,
Yes.
which was positive.
That was the next thing I wanted to say as well, because talk about the dramatic writings of a novelist. By the way, she's also pregnant.
Yep.
Just heart-wrenching. Heart-wrenching is a word that's going to be used a lot in this story.
Absolutely.
Again, it's not cosmic, it is personal, and it follows that path right from that get-go.
It was just a hard punch to the gut. I had read this story before, but it had been a long time until I had that moment where I wasn't feeling like myself, and I felt like I needed to get back to something that would help me find out or remind me of who I was. And this story is really just setting that table in such a dark way. But it's not the only darkness that we see in this story, because we see in the next scene Tim Drake, at this time was Robin, going home to his father, who is a widower and has only just recently become aware of his son's evening activities.
Right, that's something they actually were just playing out in the Robin solo series at the time. The one long-running Robin solo series, I may add, that was for Tim, right?
Yes.
And right about that point is when they actually started using that story. So for a novelist who was not deep in DC history, such as some of these other guys are, he took continuity pretty well. He used stuff from the past pretty well, both far back and as recent as things going on there. This was good editorial work, I thought, bringing that thing going on.
I agree with you. I think that this was a fantastic way for Meltzer to jump in and tell his story, making it feel very personal. And this whole thing feels like personal on all levels, and we see how this is affecting everyone. The effect that it has on Tim Drake's father when he sees that a member of the superhero community was targeted through their loved ones, and that's something that hits home, I think, for Jack and Tim Drake. They are both deeply affected by the idea that someone could come after either one of them, or use one to hurt the other. And
in that page of Jack and Tim, also, by the way, is one of the first ones where Tim truly looks his age. He's got the young, innocent eyes there, and just adds to that sadness where his father actually pulls him close.
Yeah, he's a kid. He's just in that scene. He's coming in from patrol, and his dad is watching the news where they're covering that story about what happened to Sue Denby, and you can tell, like, he doesn't say much, but you can feel the emotion on the page. And I think that's what was reaching out to me in my journey, was I felt that emotion tugging at me, and I had to follow it where it led. And much like me following my emotions, there's another character in this story who's following his, and that would be one Ray Palmer.
Mm-hmm.
The Atom. He and his longtime wife, Jean Loring, I guess they've been going through a divorce, or they've gone through a divorce.
Right.
And they're still kind of negotiating out the final details of it.
No, I think kind of, from my understanding, and I'm going back and looking back here, the divorce is final because she was a lawyer. She managed to get half of the money for his patents.
That's right.
She's now a fully successful name on her own. She's not just Adam's wife. Mm-hmm. She's become her own type of thing, and in a truly magnanimous moment, which, in my opinion, starts to show her signs of insanity, because no lawyer would do this. She decides to give him his rights to his half of his patents back. That's what he originally has the meeting for when they find out about Sue. Yeah,
it's crazy that I did think that was a little odd, but I also took it at the beginning of this story, you take that as kind of a sweet gesture. Like,
yes,
she's trying to not be, the bitter ex-wife who just takes all his money. She's like, yeah, we might not be together anymore, and I had these patents, but what am I going to do with them? And she's not harboring like a bunch of ill will.
Right, and there's also another. Now that you're talking about a little foreshadowing, deep hints, they've also gotten to the point in the relationship, as somebody who has divorced their lawyer, by the way, where they're comfortable. But this is about your identity, not mine, Russell.
No, Mitch. No. We're going to talk about your stuff.
I'm trying to move past that, but he asks about her latest boyfriend, the architect guy, and she casually mentions that they broke up. And again, it seems like a sweet moment, but as we get further in the story, it's a bit of foreshadowing.
Yes, it is one of those great foreshadowing moments that Meltzer weaves into this story so expertly. And of course, one of the main players of this, though, comes into play like right after this when we see Green Arrow finding out what has just happened.
Talk about somebody who's working with emotions in the Justice League.
Yeah, I felt like, and that's the thing. Meltzer is definitely great at writing Oliver Queen because he just did it in 5 issues of Green Arrow that followed up Kevin Smith's run on Quiver, or in the Quiver story. And of course, immediately once he finds out what's going on, you've got the Metal Men, the Ray, Mr. Miracle. Even Animal Man,
yes,
like going over that apartment like bit by bit, like piece by piece, leaving no stone or fiber unturned.
Right,
trying to find evidence of who would it have been, who would have done this, and
another note that Metzer is tied into good DC continuity, by the way, to use some of these various characters who were more popular at their time, some who are older, like Metal Men, but using them in such a way to really show all the variations that you can do and they can find.
Yeah, he is expertly using these characters to their forensic science best. And he's really thinking of this in terms of a murder mystery novel, but with superpowers. The funeral scene that comes right after this, I found particularly heartbreaking.
Oh man, that the double page spread.
Yeah.
I myself have one of the novels with the additional work in the back where they have the communications between just a dialogue between Rags and Metzer and a couple of the people involved in the book, and they talk a lot about that funeral scene and how much detail there was, and to the point of how every character has a reaction to their face, to their body mannerism, who they were sitting near, how many people there were, how far back into the funeral procession they would be, and all of these type of things. It's a very widespread moment that's brought to a very salient point by Green Arrow's comments of how they all have to show up in the outfits, because if they show up just wearing their suits, there would be a lot more photography taking done. It just kind of takes you back and really solidifies how the people look at the heroes in the DC universe at the time.
Yeah, like they're viewed as giants and titans, people who have almost like people who can do no wrong,
Right. Right.
And
in that moment, yeah. I'm looking at that page, and halfway through they have Captain Atom, the military man, standing next to Power Girl, the raging anger, so to speak. They have an incredibly upset Mary Marvel leaning on Captain Marvel there, with a shocked Barda standing next to Miracle, Canary and Zatanna comforting Ralph, and just all these characters are where they should be in terms of the relationship to the JLA and to this story. It's a really moving moment.
And particularly this funeral scene really comes to a head when Ralph tries to get up and say something about his wife, and his 3 closest friends, the Ray Palmer, Green Arrow, and Hawkman are all like kind of under their breath whispering like encouragement to him that they feel like he can do this. They're trying to be supportive, but he almost literally falls apart
I do have to say, I did find it a little odd that Adam felt the need to be miniature at the funeral and just sit on the edge of the pew. That was, I mean, we get it. He's the Adam. I don't know if that was quite necessary, but still.
Might have been an artistic choice for Rags, but it was still an interesting piece. Like, I like that. And then, all the hero teams all split up because they've got this list of suspects that they think could possibly have done this.
Right.
Ranging
between the burning of the body and Mr. Miracle's determination that there could have been teleportation involved. They go down the default list of DC villains who have one or both of those powers involved in them.
Yep. And of course, there's a separate group that forms in secret with Zatanna, Hawkman, Green Arrow, Black Canary, the Atom, and Elongated Man.
It's the very 80s JLA. It's kind of that history moment. The JLA origins had changed a couple of times at this point, and if I'm not mistaken, this is around the time where they decided that Dinah, Black Canary, was a forming member.
Yep. That plays into Mark Waid's JLA Year One.
Yeah, right. So I know, so they have the folks who joined, basically because neither Superman nor Batman are founding members. They're just implied to be the first two joining members. Mm-hmm. But they're the kind of the equivalent of Captain America joining the Avengers. They joined early enough and they're important enough that they're pseudo-founders. This is the group that joined really during my childhood. In that time period. This is all those characters that came in afterward between Hawkman, Atom, Elongated Man, Ray, Yeah.
And I got to tell you, as I'm reading this story this time, it hits me when Ralph turns to the camera, looks right at the audience,
right,
and says, "Help me find Dr. Light." Like, he's gone from sad to full-on anger.
Right.
And he says, Dr. Light, and this is the end of the first issue, and I'm thinking, when I read this, I was like, wait, Dr. Light, the idiot, the Titan, the Teen Titans villain who, was like the definition of mustache twirling moron. Dr. Light, that was who they were going to sell me on, and at that point, I'm thinking, are we really about to go there? Right. Because Dr. Light has never been that much of a threat to anyone.
Again, this is one of those things that, again, Metzer, and apparently we are both just going to be heaping praises on Brad Metzer during this entire event here, but it's one of those things that he did really well, that he tied into the history, because in the origins of Dr. Light, he was no different than the other villains. He was as menacing as your standard 60s or 70s villain would have been. He wasn't that much worse. No. Along the way, around this time period, the same time period that this JLA is forming, is when they started really playing up the, oh my God, I can't handle teens and capes anymore. I'm going to be completely ridiculous and could be completely pathetic at my supervillain, Dr. Light. He wasn't always pathetic. It's just that he wasn't particularly menacing, and they drifted into that aspect of it.
But that's how we've always been, that's how we've always had Dr. Light described to us as being this kind of buffoon. And
I'm curious because I'm wondering. I know there was a Secret Origins issue that included him around that time period when they were doing, and it was just as a suggestion of how serious the story was. I believe the art was Ty Templeton, who you would know as a relatively comic, meaning comedic, artist. I'm trying to see if I can find quickly when he was Dr. Fate, 1988. So we're talking just about a decade before this, but right about the point where he is now. Oh, excuse me, Dr. Fate, but Dr. Light as well. So it's right about that time where they show his story, and it's completely ridiculous. Oh yeah, see, look, the other stars of that particular issue, the Legion of Substitute Heroes. Oh, so there goes your theme about the seriousness of the characters.
Okay, I got to remark on something here, Mitch. This is a really impressive encyclopedia that you've got here in your hands. This is
way more than I expected. Most people would just pull it up on their computer, but here you go with like the giant encyclopedia of DC that you just have here to show me all this stuff. So
I will cop to that last part being Wikipedia, but I did remember that the Dr. Light story did come around now. Yes,
but no, I mean, people can't see us because I'm only doing this as an audio recording.
Yes, well, but technically, I really still haven't turned all the lights on in here, so but that's another story entirely.
I liked it dark, is all I can say, and that's why this story suits me so well, because it's dark as hell, and it only gets darker from here. But there are a lot of good scenes in this book, but I think one that I particularly love is this little moment here when Hawkman is in conversation with the rest of the team about going after Dr. Light, but he just kind of stops in the middle of all their conversations and seems to be staring at nothing, like just a wall.
A candelabra, as if it couldn't be more dramatic.
And he says, he tells someone to stop right there, and everyone else is looking at him like, Carter, have you lost your mind? And then he just says it. He says, "I see you, Wally." And as it is, the Flash has been moving back and forth so fast that he's invisible to everyone else. But Hawkman has his hawk eyes, if you will, not one but two hawk eyes, and he can see Wally vibrating. So this is when Wally West has to reveal himself, and it's he's not alone though, because apparently Kyle Rayner has also been hiding here. But I love this part even more.
I was about to say this is the little kicker here.
When Ollie looks up and says, "Kyle, I see you too," and Kyle reveals himself and says, "How did you know?" Ollie just looks up and says, "I bluffed."
It plays many things in there. It plays Oliver's paranoia. It plays Oliver's intelligence. It plays Kyle's rookie-ness to the business in comparison. I mean, they bring in Wally and Kyle, obviously, as the fact that they are the replacements for two characters who were important that time period, the original Green Lantern, the original Flash, and they've paired those characters up many times in the books before in this manner, but they really bring them in also as the next generation type thing and really play up the fact that Kyle is a total rookie. Wally has been in the business longer. He's been quote unquote promoted, but he's still a newbie in comparison to them, and they do. And I will also say, the one time I might give Metzer a little less credit here, he does a very good job of assigning the character roles that all these Silver Age Justice League people are. And he has them, but some of them get a little more one note. And Hawkman, his entire job in this book is to bark orders, very short, very quick orders, usually to Zatanna, who as the nurse just does them, but so at least this was the first time it felt like it was more to it before it got a little repetitive.
Yes. But I do like where this story beat goes super dark after this, because Kyle and Wally kind of noticed that this group of heroes didn't team up with any of the others. They just went off on their own. So they got suspicious and wanted to know what was up. Well, apparently this group of Justice Leaguers has a secret, and now they're going to let Wally and Kyle in on it. That in the past, Dr. Light, as it turns out, was not just a mustache-twirling villain. He was actually a lot smarter than Wally and Kyle would ever have known him. He was really
Wally in particular.
Yeah, Wally in particular, because
Wally was in the Titans.
Yep, exactly. Wally and the Teen Titans had taken him on a couple of times, and he always knew him as I know him, as this mustache-twirling kind of dumb villain, this ne'er-do-well who he can't get right. That's the way he is. He's the can't get right of the DC villain pantheon.
Oliver literally uses the word moron.
Yes, and that is the perfect word for modern day Dr. Light. But as it turns out, in the early days of the League, in the satellite era, Dr. Light was smart enough to get himself on board the Justice League satellite, and there's nobody there. They don't go into exactly why he was there. Nobody really knows, But
they think he was going to either sabotage it or he was trying to lie in wait. And they were fighting Hector Hammond at the time, another character that fits that time period so well.
Yeah, another like Silver Agey, like big Silver Age villain, classic Green Lantern villain.
Yes.
And instead of finding any heroes on board the satellite, he finds Sue Denby. And this is the most controversial part of this story. This is probably where things really go off the rails for a lot of people, because Dr. Light attacks Sue, and given the implications here in the art,
yes,
he sexually assaults her.
Yes, the word rape,
yes,
or the word is not used. Sexual is not said or even fully implied in the pages. It is discussed openly in the conversations that they have in interviews with both Rax Morales and Brad Metzer at the time. But it is very heavily implied that that is a sexual assault that happens at that time.
Yeah, because he's holding her down. He's got her bent over a table and is holding her hands down, and it seems like he's burning her hands too with his light his light projection abilities. And it seems that he either finishes or he's interrupted midstream by Barry Allen returning to the satellite.
Because, as always, the Flash gets there first.
Yep, and he stops this. The other members of the Justice League intervene, and what they decide to do to him is a pretty bold step, because he does threaten that he would do it again, that he would get out and he would find her, he would find the other wives of the superheroes and do the same.
He says he finally figured out their weakness, and he notices, for example, Flash appears to have a wedding ring under his glove.
He's truly sick. He is a sexual predator all the way.
Yeah, and he really, his facial expressions in these particular pages, you talk about sick and deranged, fully express it. They go from mustache twirling, as you would say, to full-on deviant son of a bitch.
Yeah, he is the worst of the worst at this point. And what the Justice Leaguers here decide to do, at least of the ones who are remaining on the satellite, being Barry, Ollie, Hawkman, Zatanna, Black Canary, the Atom, they all decide that they argue over it for a while. Hal Jordan was there as well. I forgot about that.
Yes, it's the seven, because Superman and Batman have left. Ralph has taken Sue to the hospital.
Yeah, he took his wife to get medical treatment while the rest of them stayed there with Dr. Light to decide what they were going to do. Now, the initial plan was they were just supposed to take him and turn him into the authorities, but they decide to take it a big step further, and you get a big argument between the heroes, but the vote goes in this direction to have Zatanna get inside his head and take all those memories from him and make him practically an invalid.
Yeah, Hawk uses the term "clean him up a bit."
Yeah, like he wants him to. I mean, it gets into some dicey territory here. Like, you're talking about like taking part of who someone is and basically mind wiping them.
Right. Now, this is actually something I find relatively ironic, that this reminds me of another teen book where somebody came into that time period type of thing, and that would be the Squadron Supreme. I don't know if you got the chance to read the Mark Grunwald Squadron Supreme 12-issue series that had come out.
I'm not familiar.
All right, well, in 85 and 86, there's a 12-issue miniseries over on Marvel's end of the Squadron Supreme, who, as you and or the audience may or may not know, is a pastiche of the Justice League in the Marvel Universe. That story by Grunwald is a very self-contained one where they have been left over with the remnants of a destroyed by literally the Overlord. That's actually the guy's name, if I'm not mistaken. Villain who has put the entire planet in ruins, and they decide, the Squadron Supreme does, to go on a utopia program and fix all the ills of the world. And one of the things they do is come up with a very similar device to what Sandana does here. So they go ahead and they try to repair the mental illness of anybody who wants to commit crimes. I just found it interesting that the fake Justice League fell down this path only to find out years later in this story that apparently the real Justice League had fallen down that path and we just didn't know it.
Yeah, it's kind of a brilliant move on Meltzer's part to put these heroes this way, but it's also hugely controversial. From the sexual assault side of it to how these superheroes act in response to it.
Right. All these big moments, all these big controversial moments are all in the same second issue as well.
Yep.
It's, the first one is a lead-in. You have the real heartstring tugger, and you don't know what's going on. And as you said, you're led to believe that Dr. Light, this moron, is the thing. But the second one is when the story really opens up, and not only in terms of the scope of it, but the controversy aspect as well. And
it leads into something pretty big because the heroes aren't the only ones aware of Sue Denby's death. The villains are made aware of it too. And the thing is, a lot of the mid and maybe upper mid tier villains and even some of the lower tier villains all kind of congregate together on their own satellite. And
some schmucks called the Injustice Gang.
Yes. Yeah, it's a real hodgepodge of, hey, some of these are pretty good villains. Like you got Merlin is here. You've got Deadshot is in the mix. Who else have we got running around in here? We got Kronos running around.
Kronos and what do you call it?
There's Phobia and Dr.
Moon, who apparently really creeps everybody out. That is a mildly, talk about just the characters. They are applied to just be abducting random members of this villain group.
Yeah, it's
once in a while, and for their own potentially sexually deviant means, and just. Signal Man's been missing for months, apparently.
Yeah, and it's a weird hodgepodge of things, but they're all getting paranoid now that they're all going to be targets because they don't know who got to Sue Denby, so there are several of them that are curious about it too. But, of course, in comes Dr. Light, trying to get to Calculator, who is kind of the head honcho here. He's kind of the guy running this whole scheme.
If I'm not mistaken, is this where Calculator gets his new modern origins, where he's basically the evil Oracle? Is that where this started?
I think it might be the first time, that we really see him in that light. That he is evil Oracle. He is doing her job for the supervillains, but he's also the power broker for them because he's funneling money. He's finding jobs for a lot of these villains, but of course they're paying him. At least to certain degrees. Now, Dr. Light tells him what's going on, and Calculator, of course, knows that he's going to need some backup because Dr. Light can't handle all these heroes on his own, so he hires Deathstroke.
Right, I was going to say, you talk about high-level or low-level villains. The two people that we need to mention in terms of the both ends here just are briefly the low end, which is Captain Boomerang, who is described and drawn as just a total loser lech. But on the high end, the man who's hanging out here is in fact Deathstroke.
And that's going to lead into one of the greatest fight scenes in the history of comics in the next issue. But as chapter 2 closes out, the doctor performing the autopsy on Sue Denby tells, I believe he's talking to Oracle.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Dr. Midnight.
Dr. Midnight from JSA. Yeah. Another good use of a legacy character because he is, in fact, a surgeon. It does make sense for him to be doing the autopsy and for to be the official guy to be doing these for the heroes.
Yeah, because everyone's under the impression that she was burned to death and that her cause of death would have been carbon monoxide inhalation. But when he opens up her lungs, he says that they're in perfect shape. Pink lungs, that she did not die of that, and that she was certainly not burned to death as was implied by the body. And this is where we find out that the heroes are going after the wrong person, which is a big twist. But of course, when we get back to the scene where we left the reveal of Deathstroke, he takes on all these heroes and he kicks their ass.
Yep, they really elevate. And this is one of the beauty strengths of Metzer's writing in this book, is that he manages to elevate several of the villains in terms of personality, in terms of character, in terms of usefulness. Not only does he bring Calculator up to the level that he is, to become this evil oracle, to become an important character that becomes really important over the next decade or two in the DC villainy hierarchy, to the point that he was one of the main bosses in a couple of those Injustice League level type things.
Absolutely.
But he reminds everyone what a badass Deathstroke the Terminator is.
And it is so good. This might be like one of my all-time favorite fight scenes, where Deathstroke is taking down Green Arrow, Black Canary, Hawkman, the Atom, the Elongated Man, Zatanna, the Flash, and Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern.
To be fair, he never quite actually takes down Kyle, but we'll get there as you clearly want to go through some of the details of this fight.
It's just he does take out Kyle. He breaks his hand.
Oh, he breaks 4 fingers.
Yeah, he breaks 4 fingers. I loved how he took out the Atom. He uses a laser pointer.
With a laser pointer.
Yeah.
Now you know why they're banned at WWE events.
Yes, it all makes sense now. That because you can take out a superhero with a laser pointer.
Two.
Yeah, 2, because it takes out
Hawkman and the Justice.
Hawkman, because the laser pointer causes the Atom to fully resize.
Right. Well, just to be clear for the audience, let's get a little specifics here. Okay. He sets down explosives in a specific pattern, knowing that Flash is going to react first, and knowing how Flash is going to react to avoid them, to the point where all he literally does is stick his sword out behind him, because he knows Flash is going to run into it.
Yep.
While he goes right into it. Next to go down is the most powerful one, Zatanna.
Yep.
She can make anything happen as long as she can say it.
But if she can't speak, she can't do anything.
One shot to the solar plexus takes care of that.
He takes out Carter's wings.
Right. He goes to attack Hawkman, and when Hawkman prepares to defend himself, that's when you realize, all he's doing is breaking the strands on the hairy-chested Hawkman, which is one of those things that, you know what, that might not have been a really good plan to design your costume that way, Carter. But he proves it.
Then he goes right for Green Arrow, and Ollie thinks that he's dodged a killing shot that could have taken his head off, but that's not what Deathstroke was aiming for. He was aiming for the quiver of arrows on his back, where he cuts off the ends of them.
It makes every arrow completely useless right off the shot.
And then he dodges Canary's scream and puts a black mask, like this thick black mask, over her face.
He basically bags her head.
Yeah,
because as they say, he hears the click of her jaw. So apparently, he's aware enough that the difference between the breathing in and the exhalation of a sonic scream results in some just sort of click. Diana really should get that looked at by TMJ doc.
That might be a thing. And then he handcuffs her so that she can't reach up and grab the bag. This is the point where he seems to pause for a second, pulls the laser pointer, causes the Atom to fully resize and fly into to Hawkman. Kyle Rayner goes for a punch, but
because he tells him, "Don't you realize I left you last for a reason?"
Yeah, it's like you know why I saved you for last. He's like, I'm testing a theory.
Yes, that's the term. Yes.
And he wanted to see if the kid could still use the ring if his fingers were broken.
Well, I think I wonder about that, because what he says is, what Kyle responds is, it'll never work for you. Yeah. Because Slade knows that of all the Green Lanterns, Kyle, frankly, doesn't really fit that willpower definition as well as the others. He was the whole,
that's true,
let's take it in a different direction scenario. He's more about the creativity. He worked his way into having the willpower as they developed the character, but at this time, again, he's the newest of the Green Lanterns, and the ring works on willpower, and Slade knows his own willpower,
Yep.
Is his willpower strong enough to overpower Kyle's and make the ring work for him? That's how I read that one.
Yeah, and then what Slade doesn't realize, though, is that in his attempts to get that ring from Kyle, he has given the other heroes a little chance to kind of catch their breath. And they all kind of jump. They follow Green Arrow's lead as Arrow pulls one of his broken arrows from his quiver and stabs it through Slade's missing eye socket, which is
brutal.
Yeah, just a brutal scene. And this is why this fight scene is important for us to talk about, because it's in this moment when all the heroes are jumping Slade at once and holding him down. Dr. Light sees this, and it triggers the memories that had been removed from, or that they thought were removed from his head. That time on the satellite when they all held him down, and you see the group of heroes that we knew were there, but there's one new amongst them. Batman.
See, now I have to ask you, do you remember when you first read it, did you notice the difference? Did you notice Batman there?
Yeah, it did trigger me whenever I was reading the story. I was like, wait a minute, Batman was not part of that original scene, or at least I didn't think he was, so I flipped back to see if he was there, and I'm like, no, Batman's never mentioned here, but he's here in this scene.
I have to say that I missed it, and it's not until later in the story when this scene is discussed that I flip back to this moment to see that Batman's in the picture, and then flip back to the point that you're talking about to see that he wasn't in the original. It's subtle because it's one of the things that Oliver says in his voiceover there, that the Justice League teaches you to fight, because at this point nobody's using their powers, nobody's using their abilities. There are no arrows, there are no sonic screams, there are no willpower greatest weapons in the universe. They're working on primal energy, and they are fighting, much like the moments where they were so upset and so angered that they just went down and beat the living crap out of Dr. Light.
But it's in this moment where, when Dr. Light's memory is triggered, he unleashes his full abilities, like this blinding flash of light that seems to blind everyone. And the next thing you know, Light and Deathstroke are gone, and Superman arrives standing over all these heroes. And
in a classic DC moment that represents Superman, the first thing that you can now see after the flash of blinding light is the hands crossed around in front of that S symbol.
And this scene, though, implies that, as they've continued discussing, who knew, who didn't know about what they did to Dr. Light, that Superman knew what they did. And
you think so?
I think the implication in the art is that.
There's the part where
because Oliver says,
right, he says
people aren't stupid,
he
Wally.
He wants to hear.
They believe what they want to believe and hear what they want to hear.
And of course, the drawing literally goes to Clark's ears.
Yep.
I mean, you see Clark leaning over, consoling Ralph again at this point, I believe, right? Yeah, he's consoling Ralph, and the close-up to him is his head leaning over in the sympathetic moment, but the focus of the panel is definitely Clark's ear, which damn well could probably hear Ali talking if he really wanted to.
That Clark probably knew what was going on. At least that's a hard implication. But this one ends on a really crazy cliffhanger with what looks to be Jean Loring, the Adams ex-wife, seemingly being attacked in her apartment and hung from a doorknob. There's a noose around her neck. She's blindfolded and gagged, and appears to be like. But
there's one other important shocker. There's one more follow-up to the secret, as we find secrets within secrets within secrets, because the X number of people knew about Dr. Light attacking, but slightly less allegedly knew about the mind wipe. And now we're finding out that this actually wasn't the first or only time that they've tried to do this. That's the moment they do. Because, again, in classic Silver Age Justice League, there is a moment where the Injustice Society, or Secret Society of Villains, one of those iterations, switched bodies with the Justice League.
Yeah.
And they handled it very cleanly and neatly in the 60s JLA comic, where they show the two of them in front of each other, they switch back, they send the bad guys to jail, and everything is fine. And as Oliver said, he goes, what do you think, they're stupid? They didn't take off their masks and take their pictures of themselves? So somehow he had to figure out how they managed to move on without everybody finding out their secrets. So this is not the first time that they had Zatanna doing this sort of thing. And it's a long time, apparently, tradition, a somewhat secret one because not everybody's aware of it, but somebody had to clean up the mess.
And that's what a lot of this really seems to be about. Like we're really getting into the kind of the dirty side of being a superhero, and the things that nobody really wanted to talk about was the reality of the choices that they sometimes have to make dealing with these situations and villains.
Right.
But as I said, the end of that issue of the third chapter is seemingly Jean Loring being attacked by presumably the same person who attacked Sue. And the next chapter opens with Ray Palmer coming to her rescue, keeping her from dying. And once again, the heroes going into this, investigative mode, pretty much like they did before, but they managed to save this person, but clearly someone's getting closer. And Superman really is starting to come down a little bit harder.
Yeah, he's acting like the head, so to speak, that he always is, the face of the thing and the responsibility level. As Oliver again says in the voiceovers, this time in the investigation they go to the very top, and now Superman himself is involved in checking out Jean's apartment.
And of course, they find no evidence of anyone else being there. Things get really tense here, and this is also the point in the story where we get a seemingly at first minor subplot of an aged Captain Boomerang, who's been trying to get more work, but nobody wants to hire him to do any kind of jobs because he's kind of a washed-up supervillain. But
I mean, he's a guy who even got a shit reputation in the Suicide Squad.
Yeah,
that takes effort.
Yeah, nobody wants to work with this guy, this poor bastard, and he's having trouble getting any kind of work from Calculator. But as it turns out, he has a kid running around, an adult son that
he literally abandoned.
Yep, and of course the rumor is that Golden Glider and he had a love child, which as it turns out that's not true.
Right.
But here's his kid. He's kind of stalking him a bit. They show him sitting in his car talking to the Calculator. He's got the crumpled up fast food things and a big gulp drink in his hand, and he looks like the total schlub that he is, and he's parked outside the kid's apartment or the kid's work, but he can't even get the courage. This is a guy who's supposed to be a supervillain, who was important enough to challenge the heroes, the Flash, or even the whole Justice League, and he can't even work up the courage to get out there and introduce himself to his own son. Luckily, his son takes the initiative and comes over to the car and introduces himself and says that, hey, I think you're my dad.
Right.
And it's like
a cute moment because he's in all the National Enquirer level papers.
Yeah,
and when a paparazzi throws a boomerang to him to try to get a picture, and the kid flings it back at him just offhandedly, never having touched one before, and slices the guy's earlobe off.
Yeah, it's a tripped out moment, especially considering that the kid and Captain Boomerang hit it off immediately. The kid is actually pretty. I say kid, he's an adult in this story, but
he's college age, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's into it though. He is perfectly okay. Getting to know his dad here, it's kind of a sweet scene, honestly.
Well, I think at the time, before the stories intertwined a little more, it felt like Metzer just literally saying, "Look, villains have families too."
Yeah, it kind of felt like maybe he was setting that up to say, pay attention here, because it's possible that the person who's been targeting the superheroes might start targeting the supervillains too. And that's why we're telling you this story, or at least that's the implication I got from it.
Right.
But of course, as this story moves forward, we've got everybody trying to solve this mystery in their own way. Of course, the big guns are handling it one way, but Ollie decides to take matters in a different direction. he
Right. Well, is this the Slipknot part where you're going? Because
not that part. Before that, he decides to go to the person that he knows is aware of who actually did this. The person that would know definitely who attacked Gene and who killed Sue.
I believe this. If I'm not mistaken, the scene. I think the scene you're discussing is actually. Oh no, it is in this issue. It's after the part that I was looking to bring in as well. But yes, I'll let you continue because this is another fantastic moment, particularly for I know your fan
yes
base.
for our big Hal Jordan Green Lantern fans. This is a great moment because Oliver goes to the grave of Hal Jordan, who, as we know, if you have read The Final Night, you know that Hal Jordan died there. And if you read Jeff Johns' very first work for DC, Day of Vengeance, I think that
was that. I was not aware of that.
No, it was not Day of. It may have been called Day of Vengeance. I'm trying to remember.
The series, if I'm not mistaken, is Day of Vengeance. I was not remembering it being one of Jeff Johns' first work there. That's funny.
But yeah, Jeff Johns was responsible for making Hal Jordan into the Spectre.
Right. And at the time considered one of the first acquiesces to the Hal Jordan fandom to try to bring him back after some of the fun stuff you guys discussed in the 0 Hour story.
Yes. And he becomes the new host for the Spirit of Vengeance, God's Spirit of Vengeance. And when Oliver goes to him, he puts on Hal Jordan puts on the theatrics of being the Spectre, and Ollie kind of gives him the third degree of, drop the act. He's like, I'm not falling for this. And then we see very classic looking Hal Jordan in the bomber jacket and everything. And then these two just talk as friends, which is a really great scene, culminating with Oliver.
One that you haven't gotten to see even long before all the stuff that turned south with Hal. They didn't put them together and didn't have them really act as the best friends that they were for so many years in a long time.
Yeah, and it's kind of a tough scene for both people, I think, because Hal Jordan is beholden to the rules of the Spectre, of being God's hand of vengeance. He's only allowed to seek vengeance when he's instructed to, and he's not allowed to interfere in the inner workings of a lot of these characters. But Oliver's having a hard time with that because he says, hey, you were our friend. You were there when all of this stuff was decided in the first place. You know who did this. And of course, Hal does imply that he does indeed know.
Right.
But he can't tell Oliver anything.
He says, I can't tell you.
But I mean, my favorite part of that scene, though, is that by the time this was being written, this was in 2004. Mm-hmm. The very next series that was going to come out featuring Hal Jordan was Jeff Johns and Ethan Van Sciver's Green Lantern Rebirth, which was going to bring Hal Jordan back from the dead and be the beginning of Jeff Johns' long run on Green Lantern. And the last scene we see of Hal Jordan here is Oliver Queen sitting there underneath his gravestone or his grave statue, saying, "So Hal, when are you coming back?" And Hal's like, "Well, I don't understand." And he says, "Yes, you do. We've been at this too long. When are you really coming back?" And Hal kind of gives him this knowing look and says, "I'm working on it."
Well, right, because one of the things that is mentioned in this series, in Identity Crisis itself, is that this is after a death and rebirth already for Oliver, one of a couple, if I'm not mistaken. But in the comics, he's already died and come back. He says, it happens to all of us. I was there. I know we don't, when we die, we don't stay dead. We know this.
Yeah, it's the meta moment of this story when they're like, "Hey, death is a revolving door. You're not really dead." It's like, we know that you're going to come back and be the hero that we all know you are. And this is the first tease, like the first real tease of what would become Green Lantern Rebirth.
Yes.
The story. This issue closes, of course, with probably Superman's worst fear coming to life, and it's when Lois Lane is sitting at the Daily Planet. She gets a note, like a mysterious envelope addressed to her, and inside is a letter that says, "Lois, I know who your husband is," and the S in husband is the Superman S shield.
Yep.
And underneath that it says, "You're next." This, of course, is going to throw everyone into like full-on panic mode, to where they are not screwing around anymore. All the heroes go after all these villains that they know have been working together.
And whoever this is, the first two people, Sue and Jean Loring, were public. Everybody knew that she's the wife of elongated man. Everyone knew that Jean Loring is the divorced ex-wife of the Atom.
Yep.
Now we're dealing with secrets, and we're going straight to the top when it comes to the secrets.
Yeah, it's like in that moment, all bets were off. They went after all the supervillains. Like
Right.
Nobody is safe at this point. And
Right. So now this is the end of issue 4, and I do think there's a couple things here that I'd like to point out as well.
Yeah.
Because first of all, that moment that they were doing that investigation thing is a cute little moment. There's actually a couple of cute little moments. One involving a personal pet fave of mine, Airwave, getting mentioned as one of the ways they could have gotten in and out of the place.
Yeah.
But when they figure out the next step of who they want to research, when Jean is hung, it's because she was hung and the knot was tied by, and I want to make sure I get this right, a specific kind of knot. It is a bowline knot, though he added a Dutch marine twist. And with all those people, with all those powers that they use to recognize these things and try to look for the clues, Superman is the one to recognize this. And why is that? It's a classic Boy Scout knot.
Just another meta moment for Brad Meltzer and Rags Morales.
And Oliver's voiceover thought is, I love him and hate him at the same time.
Like, you just can't help it. It's one of those great moments, but I like where it leads, because
which brings to the next person, the next part of the Trinity, because that's what all this is about. It leads to the next part of the Trinity. It leads to the Suicide Squad and another minor villain, Slipknot, who apparently was a villain whose superpower somehow was just to hang people.
And of course, he's locked up. He didn't do it.
He didn't do it, but he did do when he used his Slipknot. Did use, in fact, that exact knot to do things. So he is already, incarcerated. So, but it is now the next step to go investigate and find out what he knows. And now, since we're dealing with the big Trinity, we're dealing with the big guys, big guns. The next person to come and get involved here is Diana, Wonder Woman. Because if you're going to get the truth out of anybody, nothing is more important than that lasso on her hip.
Yep, she goes. She interrogates Slipknot in prison. Of course, they find out he didn't do it. And as the story then moves forward, the heroes are continuing to interrogate all these villains, and we do get another seemingly sweet moment that comes very quickly in issue 5 with the Atom and Jean Loring officially getting back together.
Yes, because there's a very emotional moment there, and there's all these types of things, and now we find out maybe what the lawyer's true motives were for giving the stuff back. She misses Ray. Yeah, they have a long history. It's a very emotional time. This is kind of things where people get back together again, and these things happen.
And of course, just to gloss over this, because it's honestly not important to the story, we have the random death of Firestorm as he was.
Because we can't have a crisis without his seemingly editorial arbitrarily death.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense really for them to just kill him off. They just do it for its own sake, it seems.
Right. It's one of the things that baffles me the most in the comics, and particularly in this miniseries. But I cannot find any indication whether it was a editorial mandate, whether it was the decision to throw somebody off. Now, Firestorm, not as badly as Flash is dying in Crises, but Firestorm is a character who has been killed off and reborn and made in various iterations many times over the 30, 40 years he's existed. I'm not even sure. I believe at this point he's just Ronnie Raymond.
Yeah, I think so, but it's never said in this story because it's...
Well, he says to say goodbye to the professor and goodbye to his dad.
Yeah.
And I believe this is before Jason Rush was mentioned. And we should explain also that when you say that this is when everybody's bringing down the hammer on all the villains, that's why we see somebody like Firestorm, because they have Titans attacking the Brotherhood of Evil. They have Nightwing going after I don't even Black Spider. Yeah. They're showing Firehawk. They're showing Beetle. They're showing the first Wildcat. And there's an arbitrary team of heroes that include Firestorm, Shining Knight, Vixen,
yep,
and Captain Marvel, who for some reason go after the Shadow Thief. And Shadow Thief takes Shining Knight's sword and poof,
he stabs
Firestorm,
who then goes nuclear.
Right.
And it's just one of those random moments, and another random thing that has like little bearing on the story as a whole, but is more or less to set up something else that winds up being ultimately inconsequential, is Captain Boomerang's son is out throwing boomerangs with his dad, but accidentally throws one that is going to go right through his dad's skull, and realizes what he's done, freaks out, and is revealed to be a speedster.
Because why not?
Yeah, because that's just a thing. It has no real bearing on the story, because as we move forward, we get to the next big important part of the story, and it's that Tim Drake's dad receives a package not unlike how Lois Lane received one, but it's a shoebox with a note that says Jack Drake, with the R in Drake being like in red and circled as in a Robin symbol.
Protect yourself.
Protect yourself is the note inside the box, sitting next to a 9mm pistol. Jack has been given a communicator by his son that he can use to reach Oracle, which he does, and is like, he's tripped out, he's freaking out because he feels, now I'm being targeted. He gets Oracle on the phone, but as we can see from the scenes outside, someone is breaking into their apartment.
Right.
We don't know who it is, but Babs gets on the communicator, calls Tim, and
Tim has just left. He's not that far. He's just left. He's in the Batmobile. As a matter of fact, he had a heavy conversation with his father, who said, maybe you shouldn't go. And he said, Dad, do you really think I'd be better served in here or out there helping? And Dad recognizes how important Tim's work is and what he does as Robin, and lets him go.
And I
will point out that this is the first extended scene, with the exception of 1 2-page spread in the previous issue, where we're finally seeing Batman. By the way,
yeah, Batman hasn't really played.
We're now into issue 5. Issue 4 had 1 2-page spread of the Batcave and Batman talking to Alfred. And now, talk of the Trinity, we had not seen hide nor hair of him until now. And of course, the time for us to see him is this completely tragic scene that really rips his heart out.
This is the emotional crux of this series to me. It's the moment that Meltzer works in that I don't think anybody really sees coming until it's building and building, and you wonder just exactly like, where is the hard-hitting emotional moment of this series? This is it, because Batman realizes that his surrogate son is about to lose his real father, and this is what Batman's whole mission has always been about: keeping the thing that happened to him from happening to anyone else.
And he looks in horror when Tim asks him to get him home.
Yeah,
he mutters, "Not again." And they actually show again a nice little touch of the little things that Rags Morales does. His foot on the gas, down to the floor.
Yeah, the Batmobile is going as fast as it can. Tim is patched into his father. They're on the phone with each other. He's telling his dad, nothing's going to happen. Like, we're on our way. And juxtaposed with this is a scene of Captain Boomerang's son coming in and checking his answering machine and hearing his dad saying that he's got this, this big job lined up, or this job that's going to, land him back in the big time and put them as Captain's Boomerang back on the map.
Yes.
And his son is thinking, "Oh no, Dad went out without me. He's gotten fat and old. He's not as
He
good.
Can't handle this.
Yeah, he's not as good as he used to be. This is a bad idea." And it's this scene of Tim Drake like crying and calling for his dad, and the young Kid Boomer or Captain Boomerang also yelling for his dad at the same time. And we see
he should have been Kid Boomerang. You're right. That's a good way to put it. But nonetheless.
Yeah, they're both freaked out, and as it turns out, the old Captain Boomerang has kicked in the door to Tim Drake's Jack Drake's apartment. Jack Drake grabs the gun, comes around the corner, fires off 3 shots, hitting Captain Boomerang square in the chest. Of course, he's not wearing armor, so the bullets go through, but Boomerang tosses one off and hits Jack Drake directly in the heart.
In the dramatic final page of the 2 bodies and the actual slow increase in blood dripping out of both of them.
Yeah, implying that both are dead instantly. And of course, the very next issue 6, opens with probably the most heartbreaking moment of the entire series, when Tim Drake just is ripping off the Robin costume. He's tearing off the mask and the shirt. Comes through the door to see his dad laying there with a boomerang sticking out of his chest, and he collapses in what has got to be just one of the most heart-wrenching panels, the full page spread of Batman cradling a crying Tim over the dead body of his father,
holding the costume.
Yeah, holding the Robin costume.
We should mention at this point, as the characters get introduced in various points in the story, there's been a lot of small voiceover boxes just saying what they are in terms of relationships. So with a scene for, let's say, Ray, the Atom, and Jean are there, it says, divorcees, or it'll show a scene of Tim and Jack, and they'll say father and son. And one of the first times, if I'm not mistaken, if not the first time in the book, it says it by the hero names, and the one panel for this page is Batman and Robin, orphans.
It is such a heartbreaking scene. Now, there's a lot that happens after this, but it's kind of the going through the motions again, like we did before. So the next really important thing that happens in this story is a discussion between Wally and Oliver Queen, as it's kind of revealed that Wally knows there was more to this story. Wally already knows that something else was there, and this is where he finds out that Batman was on that satellite too whenever Dr. Light attacked, and
right.
Batman.
We go back and we find out that big flash of a moment, pardon the pun, that we saw during the fight where Dr. Light remembers. He was more than just a flash; it was a literal light construction. Dr. Light projected an image that Wally did in fact see, and he realized that Batman was in that scene.
And he realizes that Bruce came back to the satellite to check on them, caught them in the act of removing Dr. Light's memories, and Zatanna does something similar to Bruce, where she takes his memory of that instance, and this is really the birth of Batman's ultra paranoia. This is where we see why Batman is so paranoid about the other heroes, and this is a key moment.
Absolutely, this is what will lead into some of your upcoming Crisis events.
Yes, it will.
Where it changes the DC universe, and this is why, sitting right here in this exact moment, this is a Crisis level event. There is no red skies. There are no cosmic things. There is no anti-monitor, no dark side, no time, no hyper time, no extant. But there is a defining moment that changes the DC universe to this day, to stuff we are still feeling today in the DC universe.
And it's also shortly after this when we find out what has happened to Batman, and the implication is that Batman has figured out what has happened to him, and it's why he's been playing the long game the way he has.
Yeah, there's a nice moment in the conversation between Wally and Oliver where he says, "You can't do that. This is Batman." And Oliver looks at him and says, "You don't think he's ever done the same thing to us?" And there's just the one panel of Wally not running, not moving, not saying a damn thing, because just the implication. blows his mind before he finally comes back and goes, "Oh, he'd never do that."
But then the sentence that hits me though is when Wally asks Oliver, he says, "So that's it? Bruce still has no idea?" And Oliver answers him, "Believe me, Wally, the man's a detective. He always has an idea."
Right.
Like this hard implication that Bruce has known for some time what they did, and that
right. And they play this out to great extent in many other stories, specifically how Bruce handles the fact that people know and how he reacts to multiple characters. I know shortly after this, Zatanna is brought in and out of some of the Batman books for a little while, and he treats her like absolute crap, and he says to her, "There's no reason I should ever trust you, ever. And gee, I wonder why." You know.
So, but then we get the big moment, the big aha moment is here, the reveal of who did this. Because as Dr. Midnight has continued his autopsy, he finds the mid-medulla. He's looking at the mid-medulla of Sue Denby's brain. And what's next to it is startling.
Well, he says he was randomly fiddling with the focus.
Yeah.
And he sees 2 indentations next to the blocks in her brain. So right now, it looks like something that would happen, frankly, as natural causes. She had an embolism in her brain.
Yeah.
But he happened to be looking at it, and he sees something quite remarkable.
He sees a pair of footprints.
On her brain.
On her brain. 2 little footprints, implying that someone had shrunken down so small and they got inside her head and walked around. Not unlike the plan you have scrawled out.
I was going to hope that you forgot to mention that part, but
no, that's what led me to you. That's where you got your idea to do this. You have been following this implication, and of course, everyone thinks at first it would appear that Ray Palmer has flipped heel, that he has
flipped heel, sir.
That he has flipped to the dark side, and
because again, one of the backstory pieces that go through the few moments that we do see Batman, that we do see Bruce throughout the story, as a detective, he sits back and looks at this like a murder mystery, much like a Brad Betzer novelist would write into a mystery. Who benefits? So the question is, who benefits when the following people get attacked? You know,
but
Sue, Jean, Jack Drake. And the answer is people who want the other people in their lives to come back.
And then, of course, we get the conversation. We see the 2 lovers of Ray Palmer and Jean Loring going to bed together. And Jean says something that gives herself away, because she asked him, did they ever find out who wrote that protect yourself note to Jack Drake?
Yeah, I have to say, for somebody who comes up with such a complex megalomaniacal plan, you know, this is very classic, you know, Columbo style slipping of just saying, oh yeah, that note, you know, the one that wasn't revealed.
At first I would have had an issue with it, but then I thought, she's an amateur. She's never done anything like this, and now she's gotten everything she wants. So
doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. So something like that seems like she'd probably be able to slip it by him, but Ray Palmer's too quick, and he catches it and says, "How did you know there was a note?" He flips the bedroom light back on,
right, which is important because earlier when they show Batman walking away from that scene, they show him with a note in his hand. Yep. And it's also important to think about why that note has to be gone as evidence from that scene, because it has the Robin R written on there.
It does, and Batman was going to take that personally. So and Batman knows that it's not Ray, as implied, like it hits him immediately that it's not Ray Palmer. It was Jean Loring. She's the one who did this, and the thing is, she didn't actually intend to kill Sue Denby. Sue Denby's death, as it turns out, is an accident, because Jean just wanted to scare them into thinking that someone was after them so that Ray would come back to her.
Right.
And
because she's now succeeded and she's now fully snapped, this is why the moment happens in the first place. Yes. And again, Rags Morales, if nothing else, master of the facial expressions in this book.
Dear God, is he?
he talks about who he modeled the various people after, and towards the end at one point, and the way that both Ray's horror, his sadness is projected on his face, and how you can see, much like the way Dr. Light snaps in the beginning, you can see the potential moment where Jean's brain just turns off.
She goes into like full on insanity mode, but she's caught here, and but there's no way out for her now. And Ray does the right thing. He takes her to Arkham Asylum and has her locked up.
She says, "What are you going to do? Put me away? You're going to beat me up with a good right hook? That's not what I'm not a regular villain here."
Yeah, he's like, "Nope, I'm just going to take you to Arkham." That's the very next scene. But it's not like it was something that was easy on him, because it hits him hard, and he decides to shrink down into the microverse. And we don't know when or if he's coming back.
Speaking of the good old JLA beepers, his is going off at this time, and he hands it to the doctor at Arkham and says, "Would you take this, please?" Yeah. And much like because this is not the first time that they did this with Ray either. Because if I'm not mistaken, this is how sort of the Atom starts. Because he decides to essentially disappear from the world. Yeah, and he does it by shrinking. And he says, the exact quote is that my ex-wife killed one of my best friends for me. I've never felt so small in my life.
It's a sad moment to end for Ray Palmer here, but it's this kind of watershed moment too, because we get quick flashes of everybody to see where they are. You have the supervillains all kind of getting together and being like, "Oh boy, we're kind of glad that's over." Firehawk straight up retires.
She retires.
She quits.
Yeah, I mean, she says, well, it's funny because you have to really read into it, and I think it's more fully expanded over in the Firestorm books where they do it, but they show her talking to her dad with the costume next to her. She's not wearing it anymore. She says, "I'm done." Yeah. But as it turns out, they say later that she's off the reserves list. She's just done. She quits fully.
And you get this next juxtaposition moment that I actually I really like. You see an answering machine, and it's recording something, and it's Dick Grayson calling Tim Drake, trying to get him to pick up the phone. And then the very next panel, we have Oliver Queen and the elongated man, or Ralph Denby, having a conversation, and Ralph is saying, "We've solved this mystery, but I still can't believe she's gone." And Oliver gives him, I think this is actually probably a sweet little bit of advice. He's like, "Talk to her." And Ralph doesn't understand. He's like, "Listen to me. I know. Talk to her," because Oliver was dead. He's just recently returned from the dead. And he's like, "If you just talk to her, she can hear every word," implying that that's how it was for him.
Right. And it's almost a little out of character for Oliver, but it not so much that it's completely out of character, but it's the next layer of the character, because Oliver is the emotional guy, but Oliver's emotions have always been one that bubbled immediately towards anger, towards suspicion. Yeah. When he talks about, at one point he's talking with Wally, there's a lot of back and forth scenes with him and Ollie, where he talks about the best kind of enemy to have is somebody who used to be a friend. They really know how to twist the knife. And Wally just looks and goes, "You're a real sicko, you know that?" But deep down, Oliver's emotions run into both directions. He is the caring soul. These are his family. These guys who he did in the Justice League for so many years. And he cares for Ralph so much, and he shows it.
And I can tell you that a lot of relationships change as a result of this story. And it's certainly a heavy moment the first time that all the Justice League are sitting around the table together, and Wally is looking over at Batman and not paying attention to what's being said because he can't get that image out of his mind of Batman.
Batman's saying, "Is there a problem? Say what you're thinking, Wally."
Yeah. He's like, nope, nothing at all. And as dark an ending as that seems to be, I got to say, I actually really like this final scene in the epilogue.
It really is. I think it's necessary.
It is.
To give us some semblance of light, that life goes on even in death, and all the things that happen.
because you got Ralph Denby taking Oliver's advice and telling this funny story to his wife as if she's actually there, even though he's getting into bed on his own. There's no one else there, but he still talks to her like she's there. And as it's revealed that he's there all alone, he just tells her good night and that he loves her too. Reaches over and
he stretches.
He stretches his elongated arm over, flicks the light off, and that is the end of Identity Crisis. And
yes. I mean, is there a better way to end it with the "I love you too"?
Yeah,
just one more tug at your heartstrings.
I got to tell you, Mitch, being able to talk through this story with you, it's given me an appreciation, like a deeper appreciation of this story and how it sets the tone for the DC stories going forward. And it also gives me an appreciation for your own creativity here in this plan. I got to give you credit. This is actually a pretty ingenious bit of working out here. And
well, as we've now discovered, unfortunately, when it comes to my attempt to do this, there are no more original ideas. And I hope our conversation can help you get past this, much as the DC heroes eventually try to get past this tragic moment on their lives.
Well, I've appreciated you letting me sit here in the dark on your library couch. Your cat was wonderful company.
Poo Poo is quite good when she decides she's on your side.
I have a confession. Some of the bacon strips that went missing from Greg's Baconator did not get eaten. I just saved them, and I used them to bribe your kitty to let me in your house.
That makes so much sense. She is such a victim of food temptation.
She is an incredibly talented cat.
Oh, yes, absolutely. She's been around a while.
She unlocked that door so easily.
As I said at the beginning of all this, I have found catnip on the ceiling. I know that there are cat parties in this house when I'm not here. Someday I will get proof.
I was wondering...
You think I was the evil genius? I'm pretty sure it's these cats.
Are they the ones that keep writing the hashtag Tenzel ate it all over the place? Because
No, that one's me.
You really should have blamed that one on the kitties.
I should have, but I haven't.
I think you should have laid that one at Boo's feet. But
pause, if it will.
At her paws, her two little tiny paws four little tiny paws that she very much.
Only two. What did you do to her in the dark?
I did nothing to the kitty.
Okay, is this four, right?
Yes, count them.
Okay. Good.
She would not be sitting here with me if I had harmed a cat, and I would never, because I love cats, and cats love me, especially whenever I offer them bacon.
Yes, I can understand
that. She was great, but you've given me a lot to think about here, because now that we've seen Batman's paranoia taking hold, where's this going to lead? What's about to happen with Batman and his relationship with the Justice League? This is going to change everything. And now that the other members who weren't aware of it before now know, this is a big implication. That means that while you've helped me to kind of get a firm grasp on who I am and what direction I need to go, there's more to this mystery. I have to go find someone who can guide me onto the next plane, because it feels like there's something big happening. Something infinite? Maybe. There is another crisis on the horizon, but my journey now must take me west. I feel a pull towards the west.
Well, just don't take that wrong turn at Albuquerque.
I'm going to try not to this time, because, wow, I got lost on my way here.
Well, I hope you enjoyed your brief stay in New Jersey.
New Jersey was just fine. You were just fine to me, and I appreciate your hospitality, Mitch. It was a good time sitting here talking with you. And if I want to tell you more about what happens on this journey, if you want me to give you updates on where I'm at, how can I do that? How can I send you an update on, say, social media, if you will?
The best way to reach me is probably still at Twitter, where I am Mitch O, not Mitch McConnell, which I will remind everybody every time, and I still don't even fully understand how that twist happens. I'm still hanging around in the Place to Be Nation chats, And any opportunity for any member of the Hard Traveling Fanboys or the Sarcastic Four to randomly show up at my home, you guys are always welcome, and I will do any opportunity I can to, either through my own evil plans or my cats, sneak my way into more podcasts.
Yeah, and while I'm working on that hashtag, maybe you can finally give me that follow back.
Oh, well.
That's part of why I broke into your house.
Yeah.
Oops, I gave myself away.
That's kind of a big commitment.
I know it is, but we've just spent so much quality time here together.
This is true. This was an enjoyable time for me as well.
We have just gone through. I feel like this is a real life altering moment in the history of going through DC crises, if you will. And my next guest will hopefully have you in more, if you will, to say on these subjects. But I will for sure be chronicling these journeys on Twitter at Russell_Sellers. And of course, I will rejoin my brethren in the Sarcastic Four for another episode of the Marvel Age podcast, not that long from now. And on my journey, which is far from over, there is still more to discover about what all of these crisis events mean, where they're leading, because I feel like we're headed towards something big. We're headed towards a moment that is going to take us into the next age of DC Comics. So I have to follow this to its fruition. So, Mitch, thank you again for your hospitality, for sharing your evil plans with me, and I will see you very soon, sir.
My pleasure, and remember, hashtag Tenzel ate it.
He did indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, I have left the Okun house. I feel lucky to have escaped with my life, but this journey's not over. There's a lot more to go. I think that Mitch has helped me to realize a few things that I didn't think about before. And now I'm not sure who I can trust. I've never felt this level of paranoia in my life. It's really eating at me. Like there's a mystery that I just can't quite solve. I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but now I feel this irresistible pull towards the west. There's something in Las Vegas that I have to confront, and I am on my way there right now. Got the car all powered up, ready to go. I'm going to go and crack this little bit of Morse code, if you will. Very soon, ladies and gentlemen, the next crisis could be infinite, but I am sure that I will be able to find an answer to just exactly what it is that has gone so horribly wrong. I'll see you all in Las Vegas.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
PlayStation Nation's Justin Rosero and Chad Campbell here. We want to let you know that we have a ton of great podcasts available to you on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlayStation.com, and we now offer them to you on two great feeds. On the PlayStation Wrestling feed, we bring you the Mothership, the Place to Be podcast, Main Event, Survey Says, Wrestling Warzone, a Monday Night Wars podcast retrospective, No Holds Barred, Jeff Learns Wrestling, and our monthly pay-per-view reaction shows. On top of that, we're also dipping into the vault, re-releasing the entire catalog of where the big boys play for your enjoyment. And in addition to these full-length shows, we also deliver special network pod blasts on topics old and new.
The Place to Be Nation Pop feed is loaded with great content, offering such tremendous shows covering the land of pop culture, such as Geek and Sassy, Talkin' Pop, the Glenn Butler Podcast Hour Spectacular, Sunday Groove, PTBN Play, Freak Out Drive-In, Songs with Friends, Looking Forward, Looking Back, and Lucha Undead, as well as a veritable podcast heaven for comics fans with the hard-traveling fanboys, Sellers Points, Conversation Comics, DC Post-Crisis Management, Marvel Age, and Marvel Age Masterclass, plus weekly pod blasts that cover the gamut of comic topics. The feed is also filled with insightful sports content, including the NBA team, This Week in the NFL, and more.
And you can find all these current shows, plus archives of our past podcasts, including The Kevin Kelly Show, as well by subscribing to both feeds on iTunes. And while there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others available at PlayStation.com. We cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, in-depth stretch projects, and more. Be sure to support our site by using PlayStation.com/Amazon while doing your online shopping. And download our free PTB Vintage Vault Refresh ebooks via the links on our site. We also want to thank our friends at Boneheads Wing Bar, ProWrestlingOnly.com, and TheHistoryOfWrestling.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as well. PlayStation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.